Young nurse called a billionaire and said your daughter is lying unconscious on the street. What happened? The afternoon sun was slipping between glass towers when everything changed in a single breath. On a busy downtown street, where ambition usually drowned out compassion, a small child lay motionless on the cold pavement, her tiny hand dusted with fallen autumn leaves. Around her, strangers froze in shock, phones raised but hearts unsure, while somewhere across the city a man worth billions was about to hear words that would shatter the illusion that money could protect him from loss. Before this story unfolds any further, take a moment right now. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one human choice can change many lives, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that may be silently breaking. Her name was Lily Carter, just 5 years old, with light brown hair usually tied into uneven ponytails, and a laugh that once filled the marble halls of a penthouse overlooking Manhattan. That laughter had grown rare over the past year, fading as her father's world expanded and her own grew smaller. Jonathan Carter, a self-made billionaire in the tech industry, lived a life measured in mergers, stock values, and global influence. His calendar was booked months ahead, his phone rarely silent, yet somehow he had missed the quiet signals of a child longing to be seen. Lily often spent her days with nannies and tutors, each kind but temporary, each unaware of the hollow spaces growing inside her. On that afternoon, Lily had slipped away from the building lobby during a moment of distraction. The city outside felt enormous and frightening, but also strangely inviting. She wandered only a short distance before her small body betrayed her. A weak heart condition, diagnosed but often minimized amid her father's relentless schedule, finally demanded attention. She collapsed without warning, her world going dark among strangers who did not know her name. Across the street, Emily Parker was just finishing a double shift at St. Grace Medical Center. At 26, she was a registered nurse known for steady hands and an unshakable sense of duty. Her uniform was still neatly pressed, though exhaustion lingered in her eyes. Emily had chosen nursing after losing her younger brother to a sudden illness, a loss that taught her how fragile life could be when help arrived too late. That memory never left her, especially in moments when instinct whispered that someone needed her. When Emily noticed the small crowd forming, she felt that familiar pull in her chest. She pushed through, knelt on the pavement, and saw immediately that the child was unconscious and struggling to breathe. Training took over. She assessed, stabilized as best she could, and urged someone to call emergency services. But there was something else, something urgent beyond medical procedure. Inside the little girl's jacket pocket, Emily found an identification card with a name and an emergency contact number. The name was Jonathan Carter. Emily hesitated only briefly before making the call. She had heard the name before, like most Americans had, attached to headlines about innovation, wealth, and power. When the call connected, and she realized she was speaking to him directly, her voice remained steady, but her heart raced. She explained the situation clearly, without embellishment, because this was not a moment for fear or awe. A child lay unconscious, and time was precious. Jonathan Carter had been in a boardroom on the 42nd floor of his headquarters, surrounded by executives discussing an acquisition worth more than some countries' annual budgets. The city skyline stretched behind him, glowing with confidence. When his phone vibrated, he almost ignored it. Almost. Something compelled him to glance down, to see the unknown number, to step out of the room. What he heard next tore through him faster than any market crash ever could. The world he had built so carefully seemed to tilt. He barely remembered leaving the building, barely registered the stunned faces of his colleagues. The drive to the hospital felt endless, every red light a personal betrayal. For the first time in years, Jonathan felt truly powerless. No amount of influence could rewind time, could undo the moments he had chosen work over presence, ambition over attention. At the hospital, fluorescent lights replaced sunlight, and the sterile smell of disinfectant replaced the polished scent of wealth. Lily was rushed into emergency care, doctors and nurses moving with urgency. Emily watched from a distance, her shift technically over but her conscience refusing to let her leave. She had done what she could on the street, but now she waited, silently hoping that her actions had been enough. Jonathan arrived breathless, his tailored suit suddenly irrelevant. He stood in a hallway where titles meant nothing, where every parent wore the same fear. As hours stretched on, memories surfaced uninvited. Lily's unanswered questions, her drawings left on his desk, the way she used to fall asleep waiting for him to come home. Regret settled heavy in his chest, more painful than any financial loss he had ever endured. When the doctor finally emerged with cautious but hopeful news, Jonathan felt his knees weaken. Lily was alive, stabilized. The words echoed like a miracle. She would need ongoing care, careful monitoring, and above all, emotional security. The doctor spoke clinically, but Jonathan heard a deeper message. Survival was not the same as healing. Emily crossed paths with Jonathan later that night. He recognized her immediately, not as a nurse, not as a stranger, but as the person who had bridged the gap between disaster and hope. There were no grand speeches, no public gestures, just a shared understanding that sometimes the most important acts happen quietly, without witnesses. Emily returned home exhausted, yet lighter, knowing she had honored her brother's memory by saving another child. In the days that followed, Jonathan's life began to change in ways no advisor could have predicted. Board meetings were postponed, projects were delegated. For the first time, he rearranged his world around a hospital room where a small girl slept under thin blankets, her chest rising and falling in a rhythm he learned to cherish. He read to her, held her hand, and listened when she spoke, really listened, absorbing every word as if it were a priceless asset. Lily recovered slowly, her strength returning alongside her smile. She noticed the difference in her father before he ever spoke of it. He was present, not just physically but emotionally, his phone often forgotten in his pocket. The city outside continued its relentless pace, but inside that room, time moved differently, measured in shared moments rather than profits. Emily received a letter weeks later, handwritten, simple, and sincere. It thanked her not just for medical skill, but for humanity. Enclosed was an offer of support for the nursing program she had once dreamed of starting, one focused on emergency response training in underserved communities. Jonathan did not see it as charity, he saw it as responsibility, a way to extend the second chance his daughter had been given. The program launched within a year, saving lives across neighborhoods often overlooked. Emily became its director, her story inspiring countless young nurses to trust their instincts and act with courage. She never sought recognition, but her impact rippled outward, proof that one decision on an ordinary street could transform many futures. Jonathan's transformation was quieter but profound. He stepped back from daily operations, choosing instead to mentor leaders who valued balance and empathy. His public image shifted, but more importantly, his private life deepened. Evenings were reserved for Lily, for simple dinners, bedtime stories, and conversations about school and dreams. Wealth remained, but it no longer defined him. As Lily grew stronger, she often asked about the day she fell asleep on the street. Jonathan told her not as a story of fear, but as one of kindness, of how a nurse who cared stepped forward when it mattered most. Lily learned early that heroes did not always wear capes or sit in corner offices. Sometimes they wore scrubs and followed their hearts. Just before this story ends, take a moment to comment below and share what part of this journey moved you the most. Your words may inspire someone else more than you realize. Now, as we reach the final moments of this story, consider how close tragedy came to becoming permanent loss, and how a single phone call altered that path. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of what truly matters, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement keeps these stories alive, spreading light in a world that often forgets to slow down. In a city built on ambition, a child's silent collapse taught a billionaire the value of presence, and a young nurse proved that compassion can echo far beyond a single moment. Sometimes the greatest miracles are not the ones that make headlines, but the ones that quietly bring hearts back together. Life rarely returns to normal after it brushes so closely with loss. For Jonathan Carter, the days following Lily's discharge from the hospital felt like walking through a familiar city that somehow looked completely different. The skyscrapers were still there. The traffic still roared. The screens still flashed numbers that once ruled his emotions. But inside him, something fundamental had shifted. Each morning, instead of reaching for his phone to check markets, he watched Lily sleep for a few extra seconds, listening to her breathing as if it were the most valuable sound on earth. Lily's recovery was not instant. There were therapy appointments, medication schedules, and moments when fear crept back quietly, usually at night. Sometimes she would wake from bad dreams, clutching her chest, unsure why her body had betrayed her. On those nights, Jonathan sat beside her bed until morning, realizing how many nights he had missed before, nights that would never return. He learned patience the hard way, not through business setbacks, but through the slow, delicate process of rebuilding trust with a child who once believed she was invisible. Emily Parker returned to her routine at the hospital, but routine no longer fit her the same way. Colleagues noticed a change, not exhaustion, but a deeper resolve. She approached every patient with renewed intensity, aware that behind each chart was a family who might be one phone call away from collapse. Though she never spoke publicly about Lily or Jonathan, the experience sharpened her purpose. She began advocating more fiercely for emergency preparedness training, especially for nurses who worked outside hospital walls, where seconds mattered most. Meanwhile, Jonathan found himself questioning decisions he once made without hesitation. He began attending Lily's follow-up appointments personally, sitting beside other parents in waiting rooms, hearing stories that money could not erase, stories of single mothers, overworked fathers, families balancing hope and fear with no safety net. These encounters humbled him. For the first time, he understood how close many people lived to the edge, how easily one accident could unravel everything. One afternoon, months later, Jonathan asked Emily to meet him, not as a billionaire summoning an employee, but as a father seeking guidance. They sat in a quiet cafe near the hospital, far from boardrooms and cameras. Jonathan listened more than he spoke. Emily talked about burnout, about nurses who wanted to do more but lacked resources, about communities where emergency response times were dangerously long. Jonathan heard not a request for money, but a call for partnership. That conversation became the foundation for something bigger. Together they designed programs that placed trained medical responders in public spaces, funded mobile clinics, and offered scholarships to students who wanted to serve where the need was greatest. Jonathan used his influence not to dominate headlines, but to open doors. Emily ensured that compassion remained at the center of every decision, refusing to let the mission become just another corporate initiative. Lily watched these changes unfold with a child's quiet awareness. She noticed her father smile more, noticed Emily's occasional visits, noticed how strangers now thanked her dad not for his wealth, but for his heart. Lily began drawing again. Pictures of nurses with angel wings, of cities filled with helping hands. One drawing hung framed in Jonathan's office, a reminder of why the room now felt different. Years passed, and Lily grew stronger, her condition well managed, her confidence blooming. She stood on a small stage at a community event once, holding Jonathan's hand, shy but determined. When she spoke about kindness and courage, the crowd listened, not because she was a billionaire's daughter, but because her story was real. Jonathan felt tears he no longer tried to hide. Emily eventually stepped into a national leadership role, shaping healthcare policies that prioritized rapid response and human connection. Despite recognition, she remained grounded, often returning to hospital floors to mentor young nurses. She told them that skill saved lives, but presence saved souls. Many of them carried her words forward, becoming quiet heroes in places that would never make the news. Jonathan's company continued to succeed, but success now looked different. Flexible schedules, mental health support, and family-first policies became standard. Other corporations followed. Change spread not through pressure, but example. Jonathan never claimed credit. He simply told the truth when asked, that everything changed the day his daughter collapsed on a street and a nurse chose to act. Late one evening, as Jonathan tucked Lily into bed, she asked a simple question about fate and choice. He answered honestly, saying that life could turn in an instant, but what mattered was how people responded. Lily smiled sleepily, secure in the knowledge that her father would be there when she woke. And somewhere in the city, another nurse hurried toward a stranger in need, inspired by a story she once heard about a child, a phone call, and the quiet power of compassion. Because sometimes, the world does not change through grand speeches or massive deals, but through one person stopping, kneeling, and caring when it matters most.